Oak Haven, Arizona Territory, 1888. A town choked in dust, whiskey, and desperate hearts. On the porch of a weathered general store, a father sells his frail daughter, Elara Vance, to a cruel mill owner for a pouch of silver. But when a cattle drover named David Carson steps in, risking everything he owns to buy her freedom, their lives collide with fate. What begins as a cruel sale soon becomes a journey of sacrifice, hope, and love born out of dust and destiny. Watch the story to uncover what Elara faced and what more her destiny had in store. Tell us where you're watching from, partner, and join our Sleep West family. Now let's ride into the story.
Oak Haven, Arizona Territory, summer of 1888. The air in Oak Haven pressed down, thick with alkali dust, cheap whiskey, and the smell of sun-cured leather. The settlement was a knot of weathered wood in desperation, choked by the expanse of the Apache National Forest. On the porch of the general store, a cruel transaction was unfolding. Elara Vance, 19, stood rigid. She was remarkably pretty. Her face held delicate, regular features, and she had striking chestnut hair. But she was visibly frail, worn thin by years of hard labor and poor feeding. Her blue-gray eyes, however, held a fierce private intelligence her family had only ever sought to crush. Her mother had died years ago, leaving her to the harsh mercies of her father, Gideon Vance, a failed prospector, and her older brother, Jasper, a sullen brute. "She's nothing but a drain on our last few dollars," Gideon sneered, running a thumb over his mustache. "She's too sickly to be an honest field hand, and we can't afford the doctoring or a dowry. Her looks are no use to us." "She thinks too much," Jasper chimed in, spitting a stream of tobacco juice. "A good silent worker if you break her early. But keep her away from the books. She's delicate, but she's got notions." The buyer was Silas Thorne, the owner of the town's only respectable lumber mill. His face was a patchwork of old scars, and his cold eyes held a vile, calculating look. He clinked a small leather pouch of silver coins. "I'll risk the consumption. She'll do light work, serving drinks, keeping my accounts. Here's the final offer. Take it or leave it, Vance. She's pretty but weak." Gideon snatched the bag. "Done." A small crowd had gathered. They muttered darkly about the shame of a man selling his own kin for pocket change. Just then, a disturbance drew every eye. David Carson, a young man in his mid-20s, strode through the onlookers. He was a cattle drover, rugged and honest, who ran a successful operation from a cabin outside of town. He had an honest, open face, but his eyes held the unmistakable focus of a man who lived by his principles. He had witnessed the tail end of the brutal treatment Elara had endured that morning. "What is the meaning of this?" David's voice was firm, carrying over the rising dust. "They're selling her, Carson," a miner grumbled. "Her PA says she's useless, a financial burden since her mother died, and left her too frail for farm work." David looked at the girl, then at Silas, at the vile, possessive look in his eyes. He stepped forward. "Thorne, this transaction is filth," David said, his voice low and dangerous. "Name your price, Vance. I'll double it for her freedom." Gideon's eyes widened at the prospect of more money. Silas Thorne bristled. "Stay out of this, drover. You got no claim." "I have a claim to decency," David countered, his voice like cold steel. He looked at Elara, whose face was a mask of shock. "Don't you dare go with this man. Walk away. I'll pay your passage out of this place." Elara finally looked up. For the first time, a man looked at her with respect instead of desire or disdain. "You can't pay that kind of money, Carson," Silas sneered. "I'll find it," David stated, not taking his eyes off Elara. "I will be back by sundown. I will buy your freedom, if you choose to take it." He didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked straight for the livery stable. He didn't have the coin. He had one thing of value, a magnificent dark bay mare named Bess, his partner, his dearest possession. He loved that horse. Elara watched him go, feeling a tremor of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. the new path, and the sacrifice. David returned just as the sun dipped behind the mountain peaks. He carried a heavy canvas bag. He had sold Bess for a steep, necessary price. He tossed the bag onto the porch. The coins clinked louder than Silas Thorne's silver. There, enough to buy a clean start for one person, David announced. Gideon snatched the bag. Silas, defeated, cursed and stomped away. David turned to Alara. Come on, the sun is setting. He placed her on the back of his remaining pack mule. They rode out of Oakhaven, leaving the vile smells behind. When they reached David's sturdy log cabin, he began offloading supplies. This is it, David said. You stay in the cabin. I'll sleep in the barn with the stock. Alara finally found her voice. Her lips were dry. Why did you do this? I am not a wife. I am not strong. I am only a burden. You are a person, David replied simply, pulling a tin of beans. And no person is for sale. The only work you owe me is helping keep this place from falling over. No demands. No forced smiles. You stay as long as you need to. And when you're ready, you leave. The choice is yours. Over the next few days, Alara began to recover. David's gentle nature was a revelation. He worked on to dusk, treating her with the quiet courtesy of an equal. He never mocked her frailty. He simply brought her extra blankets and gave her the lightest chores. One morning she noticed the empty stall in the barn, the absence of the familiar deep bay coat and the soft nuzzle David used to receive. She asked the stable hand David had hired. The mare, Bess, best horse in the county. Mr. Carson sold her a few days back. Needed the cash in a hurry, I heard. The truth struck Alara. David had sold the only thing he truly loved, his partner in his business, to buy her freedom. Guilt and a strange, powerful warmth flooded her chest. That evening, as they shared a meal, Alara spoke. You sold your horse, didn't you, Bess, to get the money? David stopped eating. She needed a good home. I got a fair price. You sold her for me, Alara insisted, her voice trembling. I will not have it. I am not worth a good horse. You are, David said simply. And the deal is done. No, we will fix it, Alara decided, her eyes blazing with newfound resolve. I will work for you. I know numbers. I can track your stock, keep your ledgers. Pay me a fair wage, David, but I refuse to keep the money. You will use it to buy Bess back. Reluctantly, David agreed. He rode back to the stable, but he returned with a somber face. The man who bought Bess, he got wind of why I sold her. David explained, hanging his head.
He's a callous snake.
He wants double the price now. Said I had a woman to pay for, so I must have the means. Alara took his hand. Then we work for double. We'll buy her back, together. The shared goal solidified their partnership. David taught her to ride the remaining stock, and Alara, with relentless focus, took over the ledgers. Her quick mind saved David hundreds of dollars in inventory losses. Their cabin was no longer just a shelter. It was becoming a home, built on mutual respect and shared labor. The weeks turned into months, each one bringing noticeable improvements to her physical and mental state. Alara began to gain weight and strength steadily, the constant anxiety fading as regular wholesome food and genuine peace nurtured her back to health. The high desert sun brought a healthy, vital color back to her cheeks, replacing the pale, sickly hue of abuse and neglect. Concurrently, her hands hardened with honest, satisfying ranch work, proving their capability. Beyond physical labor, she devoted hours to reading. She devoured David's meager collection of books, absorbing knowledge previously denied to her. As she practiced, her writing, once hesitant and uneven, became clear and beautifully formed. One quiet afternoon, a formally dressed solicitor from a powerful competing cattle baron based in the bustling town of Prescott unexpectedly arrived at the isolated cabin. He presented Alara with a crisp, signed contract detailing a lucrative job offer. Our foreman says you're the sharpest accountant he's ever seen, Miss Vance. Your quick mind with figures has come to our attention. We want you immediately. We're offering a good salary, substantially higher than you'll find anywhere else, along with a nice private room in town. You'll be the very first woman in Prescott hired strictly for her brains, not her body. This was an unprecedented chance for respect and financial power. Alara's chest tightened instantly. A salary was more than just money, it meant true independence. Financial freedom she had never imagined. Most importantly, the substantial funds would secure Bess's return to David almost immediately, ending the sacrifice he had made for her. That night, she held the contract, a crinkling symbol of her difficult choice, by the fire. David was mending a bridle, the leather creaking softly, his usual comforting silence now heavy with shared tension. I could finally stand completely on my own, Alara whispered, the possibility tasting of both excitement and fear. David paused his work, his gaze rising slowly to meet hers, his honest face etched with deep worry. The world out there, Alara, it's fundamentally different from this cabin. It's a ruthless, self-serving place, perhaps even more cruel than your father ever was, because its cruelty is masked by commerce. They will still treat you as a commodity, simply valuing your intellect rather than your beauty or strength. Why test the hard-won freedom and respect you've already earned here? Do you think I'm weak, that I can't handle it? She challenged, sensing his protective instinct. I think you're the strongest person I know, he firmly replied, locking his gaze with hers. You endured things that would have broken anyone else, but I also know that choice is the only true freedom. This decision must be entirely yours. You must make your own path. I won't stop you from finding your place. The very next morning, she left. She was rigid with determination, bracing herself against the unknown path as she rode steadily toward Prescott. David stood on the porch, a lone solid figure, and watched her until she vanished into the trees, his heart heavy with apprehension and unspoken love. Prescott proved to be a maelstrom of harsh commerce and relentless ambition. Alara was indeed brilliant at her job, her intellect proving invaluable to the cattle baron, but the genuine respect she had received from David was nowhere to be found among the self-interested men. She was often mocked for her plain ranch clothes and quiet demeanor, overworked with impossible demands, and the pervasive loneliness became a tangible ache that consumed her nights. She desperately missed the quiet, steady rhythm of David's work, the simple, honest meals they shared, and the absolute safety and peace she had felt in the tiny cabin. She realized David wasn't just warning her out of fear. He understood the core difference between being valued as a human and being exploited for a skill. After only a single agonizing month, she knew the undeniable truth. She immediately cashed her first and final paycheck, packed her belongings, and rode back toward Oak Haven, the money now solely designated for purchasing Bess. She arrived at the cabin late one evening, exhausted and humbled by her experience. David was sitting on the porch, a familiar sentinel, staring silently out at the empty corral. "David?" she called out, her voice thick with raw emotion and relief. He rose slowly, his face reflecting a mixture of hope and fear. "You came back." "I did," she confessed, tears finally streaming down her face. "You told me the world outside was cruel, and you were right. I didn't believe you until I saw it for myself. I thought freedom meant independence, earning a high salary, and having my own room. But I found out it truly means respect. I choose this. I choose you. You built me a roof, but you gave me a life of my own value. I love you, David Carson." He walked toward her, took her hand, and placed the hard-earned roll of money into his palm. 2 days later, David rode the familiar, proud bay mare, Bess, back into the yard, her excited whinny echoing their success. That fall, with the mountain air crisp and the sky a vibrant blue, David and Alara married beneath the giant cedar tree by the stream. Alara's face glowed with radiant health and calm beauty, wearing a simple linen dress she had carefully stitched and wildflowers braided into her thick hair. David stood beside her, his beard neatly trimmed, his gaze steady and filled with a serene joy. I always sought strength in distance and silence, David said, his voice thick with profound emotion as he addressed the assembled valley folk. I believed a man found his peace alone in the mountains, relying only on himself. But Alara taught me that a life is only finished, truly finished, when you have someone to share the journey with, someone who sees your soul and elevates your purpose. She is my wife today, not because I purchased her freedom, but because she chose to stay and build this life with me, freely. Alara's hands, now strong and sure, slipped a simple silver wedding band onto David's finger, completing the ritual, then placed one on her own. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could offer, David, she murmured, her eyes shining with absolute commitment. The right to choose, and having seen the whole world, I choose you. I choose this home, I choose this life, and I choose this partnership. Their life began in earnest, settling into a profound rhythm of shared purpose and quiet ambition. Alara, the woman her family had once scornfully called a financial burden and incapable, set up a long, sturdy wooden table with a slate and chalk. She began her new cherished vocation, teaching the scattered ranch and valley children. They came to her, paying for their lessons in eggs, cornmeal and winter pelts. Her voice, once timid and only used in self-defense, was now strong and clear, filling the cabin with the sound of learning as she diligently taught the ABCs and basic sums to a new eager generation. David would often pause his work to watch her from the porch, leaning on the post, a silent observer of her triumph and fulfillment. He was constantly carving small wooden stools and writing slates for her growing number of students. His quiet pride, a beautiful palpable thing that shone clearly through the deep lines of his weathered face. Alara Carson was no longer frail, a debt, or a burden. She had become a teacher, a loving partner, a home builder, and finally, unequivocally, free to choose, free to love, and free to share her valuable intellect with the world.